I was just writing a lecture which was about this woman, Musa, who is a crazy story. And she ties into Augustus, actually. Augustus, his biggest diplomatic triumph that he boasted about constantly was that about 50 years before him, the Romans had sent an expedition into Parthia, this neighboring kingdom, led by Crassus, and they'd gotten wiped out. So it was this big disaster, military disaster. And the standards of the Roman legions, the eagles that each Roman legion carried, had been captured by the Parthians. And this is the most humiliating thing that can happen to a Roman legion, to have its eagles captured. And Augustus desperately wanted to negotiate with the Parthians to get these eagles returned. Okay, this was his big diplomatic thing. So he was constantly sending these embassies to Parthia. On one of these embassies, he sent along as a gift to the Parthian king a slave woman named Musa. Musa seems to have pleased the king of Parthia because she becomes one of his concubines. And then she gives birth to a son by the king, and eventually she becomes upgraded to the level of wife. And Musa eventually murders the Parthian king, arranges it so that her son becomes the king of Parthia, and she's really ruling the whole empire behind the scenes as his mother. So this is a literal rags to riches story of a slave, someone who starts out a slave and becomes the queen of an empire almost as large and powerful as Rome. Okay? But yet, how often do we hear about Musa? Yeah. And when you look in traditional histories of Roman-Parthian relations, and I went and looked at this because I was just writing this lecture, most of those histories didn't even mention her. They just talked about her son, like he had just come out of nowhere and become the new heir to the Parthian throne, when it was all her doing, clearly. Now, that's selective editing of history by historians to downplay the role that this woman played. And there's a lot of examples like that.
That's fascinating.
She got overthrown after a few years. There was a revolution against her, and we don't know what happened to her then. But she's a really interesting figure. Oh, and by the way, Augustus did negotiate the return of the Parthian standards and got them back. And he was so proud of this that this is what he constantly boasted about. And the most famous statue of Augustus, the Augustus from Prima Porta, which is in the Vatican today, he's wearing a breastplate. And on the breastplate, right in the middle of the stomach, is a Parthian handing over a golden eagle legionary standard to a Roman. So this is what Augustus thought of as his greatest achievement. And that embassy that arranged that was the one that sent Musa to Parthia.